Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished entrepreneur from the wellness space, Mr. Ashwin Naik. Ashwin, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Ashwin is the founder of Manah Wellness. He's a go-to expert on affordable healthcare innovation, scaling social impact, and mental well-being at work. He's an Ashoka Fellow. He was recognized by the World Economic Forum as a young global leader, and he's an author of 2 books titled The Healthcare Game Changers and Change Starts Young. So, Ashwin, let's first talk about Manah Wellness. Tell me about this venture.
Great to be here, Ashutosh, and a delight to be on your show. I've been a big fan.
Thank you.
Coming to Manah Wellness, we feel that the world of work has transformed significantly in the last 18 months or so. And what will be workplaces of the future? What will the employee-employer relationship look like in the future? How will we recruit? How will we upskill? How will we train? Will change drastically. And one of the key elements that we feel which will play a significant role is employee well-being.
Correct.
And we are seeing that shift happening already. Companies are becoming aware of the need for employee well-being. But we feel that beyond employee well-being as a benefit, it will become a core competency for leadership. Okay. And that's where we feel very positive about what we do at Manah Wellness. We help organizations build emotionally healthy workplaces by doing assessments of well-being of employees, then equipping them with tools and resources, providing direct service, and also skilling their leaders and managers to become champions of well-being at work. So it's been an interesting year and a half journey for us. We started just before the pandemic, so gone through the entire motion. But feel very positive about how the world is shifting and a small role we can play in that.
Very interesting. So before I ask you another question, tell me what is the meaning of the word mana?
So mana is the Sanskrit for mind, but what we also feel is that many a times we associate mental well-being with the brain, but I think it's more of the mind, right? Okay. So, and mind is a slightly different concept than brain. So I think that's where we thought this could be a good association. Your well-being and mana come together.
Very interesting. So, you just mentioned 2 things. One is mental well-being and the second is the pandemic.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you that, and let's look at pre and post pandemic. What are some of the mental well-being challenges you saw are there in the corporate world before the pandemic, and how did these change or escalate in the world post the pandemic?
Yeah, so a couple of things here. First is the mental health or mental well-being issues were only highlighted by the pandemic. I think we all had this sort of layer beneath the surface. And one thing I want to highlight here is when we think about mental health, we always think of it in terms of illness. It's like saying that some people are depressed, some people have schizophrenia and things like that. But that's a very small percentage of people. What we believe is everybody, all 100% of us have mental health, and we can always get better. Right? And just the example or an analogy to this is in the 70s, the only people who went to the gyms were bodybuilders.
Correct.
Right? Now everybody goes. If you don't go, you are an outlier. So how can you build an awareness of mental health that everybody feels that I can do something? It's like going to the gym. Sure. You can become better, right? You can pick up tools, tricks, tips, and become better. So how can we build a culture of emotional well-being in addition to physical well-being? So that is where we started. Now, to your question, how have things changed? I think, organizations particularly have become more aware of the need for employee well-being. And significantly, what we have seen is the middle management, which has been impacted. People talk about stress and anxiety in the workforce. It is the middle management who has to redefine their jobs. You have to report up and manage down.
Correct.
While not having any visibility, physical visibility on what's happening. That creates a lot of anxiety and stress. So we are seeing that the importance of mental health, not at the entry level because of excess work or stress, but the ability to navigate this new change has created undue pressure, and people need. So that's one. The second one is it has exposed the fact that we are not training our managers and leaders how to have these conversations to begin with. Forget intervening. A lot of people are still struggling. If they find their colleagues struggling, the first response is either to ignore completely or to say something which might not be useful. So how do you first diagnose, not diagnose, I shouldn't use the word diagnose. How do you detect the signs? How do you have a conversation? And then how do you do the right thing for the employees or for your team member? Has become very critical in this environment. So that's the shift that we are seeing.
Very interesting. So, just a follow-up from what you just commented on, on how to help a colleague. My question to you is that how do I, as a colleague, know what should I watch out for? Because even though mental wellness is a little more open in the workplace now, it is still not talked about too much.
Yeah. So a couple of things. We have a full training program for managers, but I'll just share some highlights. Number one is it is not individuals that we have to look out for. I think we have to look out for ourselves. We have to look out for everybody, because there will be good days, there will be bad days, there will be trigger issues, there will be, things like that. So one of the things to be aware of is what are the signs, and the signs typically are necessarily not mental health related. Many of the mental health issues first show up as physical issues, right? Excessive sort of taking time off to attend to things, physical ailments, lack of sleep, inconsistent behavior. For example, somebody who's very regular in meetings, contributing, suddenly is, going into a shell. Anything which shows a changed sort of behavior should be a clue. But I think one important thing is not to sort of start putting labels on people right away, right? So how do you then have a conversation, offer support, and then if needed, point them to the right professional is I think very critical.
So just to continue with the same thought for another question, if I notice a colleague of mine is, going into one of the symptoms of one of the areas that you spoke about, gone into a shell, not contributing at meetings, or maybe just anger or whatever, what should I do? Go to my HR head, or what is the next step?
So the one thing that we recommend is, nobody should be in a position that you just mentioned, saying, what should I do? Right? It should be a standard sort of training provided to people. This is what you do. And different organizations have different ways of dealing with it. Some might have a system where they can talk to the HR person. Some might have different ways. For example, we train companies in building peer mental health ambassadors. These people are trained. They know what signs to identify and how to support, and then how to point them to the right people.
Correct.
There are various ways to do it. One example I would share is what DuPont has done, and this program is now available across the globe. What they have done is implemented a program called ICU, which is sort of a play on ICU and intensive care as well. So the three pieces of ICU is identify, connect, and understand. So there's, they train people on how to identify, how to connect, and how to understand, and then help their colleague in dealing with whatever it is. The key point here is not doing a diagnosis. I think that's what we believe, which is how to not say the wrong things.
Correct. So, Ashwin, I agree with you that we should not try and diagnose or, try and prescribe. But how important is it for the individual who's going through the stress to be able to understand that he or she needs help?
Question, because many a times we might not even realize that, no? Because we can't see. So one of the interesting things I learned earlier in this space is if your body has a problem, it can tell your mind.
Correct.
But if your mind has a problem, who does it tell to? Right? So sometimes you are not aware of your behavior. So I think that goes back to the fundamental pieces of what the culture at the organization looks like. People should have the psychological space to come up and say, this is what the issue is, this is what I'm struggling with, or this is what I feel has changed in your behavior, etc. That's one. Second is, we have to first take out the fear of asking for help. Correct. Right? If people feel that, okay, it's okay, I mean, everybody will have that time, will have that period where I will need help or I will need some support, people will be more forthcoming. And quite honestly, in corporate India, I think it is changing. People are coming, and we have seen organizations where 70-80% of the same organization, everybody from the CEO all the way to freshers have signed up to our service, which is unheard of. That people will, and this is not because they have an issue, because they believe that is an important skill that they have to learn for themselves.
And when you say signed up for our service, what are some of the things that you're doing for these corporates?
So everything starts with an assessment. We believe that in the past, a lot of this mental health has been pushed as a one size fits everyone. We start with an assessment. We say that let's figure out what are the skills that you already have. What are the skills? And when I say skills, these are literally coping skills, right? You might have a different reaction to stress. I might have a different reaction to stress. It's important to see where we stand, right? We start with an assessment. Based on an assessment, we create an individual plan for improvement, and for you, and also as an organization as a whole, if it requires, sort of a group intervention. Then we work with the individuals over a period of time. This includes giving them one-on-one counseling, coaching, plus also giving them the tools and technology to support themselves. And finally, at the organization level, we help build this champions or well-being ambassadors who can then be, help each other out.
Very interesting. So my next question to you is that, you did mention that one of the areas you see challenges are in middle management.
Yeah.
My question to you is that with the entry of so many millennials and Gen Zs in the corporate world, and they are the young people who are inheriting our earth, which people of my generation seem to have messed up completely.
Sure.
What are some of the mental well-being challenges you are seeing in the young?
I think this is a very important question, and also a point of conversation at many organizations, which is how do we support our millennial employees? I think millennial is already gone now. Gen Z and maybe Gen Y, or I don't know what's the Gen classification.
Something new from the alphabet soup will come up.
Yes. This generation, the workforce. The young people who are joining the workforce in this period has never happened before, right? You are joining at the time of the worst global pandemic.
Correct.
You're probably joining in a remote setting. You've not met some of your colleagues as yet. You also are struggling through employment issues. Globally, there is a loss of employment, and people are struggling to get jobs. Now, once they come in the earlier days, pre-pandemic, there was an opportunity to assimilate them into the culture of the organization through informal chats, through through buddy system or whatever in the office environment.
Yeah.
Now it's completely remote. And what is happening is, this is from the organization side. From the individual side, they are also questioning the fact that what is this concept of going to or joining one organization? right? Why can't I have multiple jobs at the same time? And that's why you're seeing this people who are talking about the great resignation and people trying to do this. So I think the concept of a job, the concept of a career, the concept of an employee is changing significantly. And young people are leading this. They are saying, I want to work with 2 companies, 3 companies at the same time. Who came up with this idea that I should be working, 9 to 5 at one company? I'll work 4 hours here, 4 hours there. And so they are challenging these norms, and that is putting a little bit of stress on the system. The other shift that we are seeing is young people are asking for mental health support at work. Right? In our generation, when you and I went to school, probably I don't think we even had a counselor in school.
No.
And the next generation had a counselor in school whose only job was to fix the trouble-making kids.
Correct.
Right? When you said you go to the counselor, you had to go to you did some mischief, and you have to go there. But my daughter's school now has a counselor, and I think many private schools have counselors who are there to support children's well-being.
Correct.
Right? Now, what happens when they graduate? When they come to the workforce, they are expecting the same kind of support.
Correct.
And that's what they are doing. And one of the studies that came out recently said that well-being at workplace is one of the key criteria that young people are using as a filter for employers. So I think it's going to be a very interesting time.
Very interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking, there's a big generation gap between you and me. And I was thinking when I was in school and we got into trouble, we used to go to the principal's office, and I was in one of these Irish brothers' school, and he would look at the wall where there were a series of canes.
Oh.
He would say, pick your cane because you're going to get whipped with that. The big change now that you're saying that, they're even asking for counselors. So big change as far as my perspective goes, but thank you for sharing that. Sure. So, moving on now, I've got one more question on mental well-being before I come to your book. Why is it that mental well-being is still being talked about in such hushed tones in our country?
So I should clarify, this is not just our country.
Okay.
This is global.
Okay.
Right? Some countries are slightly ahead. Some countries are slightly behind. For example, I know that in Brazil, it's absolutely, it's not completely unstigmatized, but it's very common for people to say, I'm going for my therapy. Even younger children going to therapy is commonplace.
Okay.
But many countries around the world, it's still a little bit of stigma. And I think there are various theories around it. But from my own perspective, I feel that there are 3 specific challenges which has sort of led to this stigmatization. One is mental health or mental illness in our mythology or in our ancient texts was always associated with some kind of deviant behavior. While we know that a lot of great artists had mental health issues and they were able to create a lot of great work, even with mental health issues. But historically, it has been in our ancient books, it's always considered something to be feared of. So that's one. The second is our popular culture. Movies, books have always portrayed this in a certain way.
Correct.
As a threat to society, right? So that's another stigma that has stuck in. And the third one is we have not understood mental health as something that we can all build, improve, and become better at. It's not a one-way street, right? Because that's what people have been thinking about. So there's a lot of stigma around these kind of issues. But it's slowly changing. As you've seen, a lot of celebrities, a lot of personalities have come up. The biggest change will come not by celebrities or people in powerful positions saying this, but people like you and me who can step up and then say, this is normal. Correct. It's happening in our families, and we are going out and seeking help. Then the conversation will change. In my own case, my mother was underdiagnosed for about 10 years.
Mm.
And this is another reason I'm very passionate about this, is when she was diagnosed properly,
Mm.
she reclaimed her life that she had lost for 10 years, right? So it's very important that people seek that help and quickly find the support.
Very well said. So, Ashwin, I'm going to move now to your books. And all my viewers and listeners know that I'm always very partial to authors. So, tell me about both your books, The Healthcare Game Changers and Change Starts Young. But before you tell me, are these books available on Amazon and other platforms?
Yes. Yes. These books are available on Amazon. And I also had a new release last month, which I'll talk about a little bit. So my third book.
Tell me about your books now.
So I've been very interested in reading different genres of books, partial to non-fiction, and the interest started very young. When I was very young, my father was a big reader, so he had lots of books, so I got exposed to them. And when I went to medical school, one of the interesting things I picked up is if you pick up reference books of medical subjects, particularly that were printed in the West, in the footnote they had much more interesting stuff than in the text.
Okay.
So, for example, somebody found a new cell part. Then they'll have a footnote saying this was the history of this person. This is a scientist, did this, that. So I used to enjoy reading those more than the text. So that's how I got interested in learning more about the people behind the stories.
Wow. Okay.
So to say, right? So that interest always stayed. So when a few years ago, when I was looking at healthcare, I initially started with looking at what is changing in health. And my big thesis is in the next 20-25 years, healthcare will change significantly.
Right.
And significantly in the sense that healthcare historically has been associated with hospitals. It will move out of the hospital. We will do 80-90% of what is happening in the hospitals today at home. Technology will help. People will come to our place and we will do it at home, right?
Correct.
So my question was, if that is sort of the broad way in which the sector is moving, who are the people behind this movement?
Right.
That's how I started looking at people, interesting ideas. And that led to the book, Healthcare Game Changers.
Okay.
It's a story of about 12 innovators from around the world who are really taking this concept already and bringing healthcare to your doorstep. And the idea is to document, what are their models, how do they operate, what are the learnings, what are the challenges, etc., etc. So stories from across the world. Brazil, of course, India, US, European.
Right.
The only continent I was not able to capture, two continents, Africa and Australia, but otherwise every part of the world.
Oh, nice. Okay. Okay. And what about your newest book?
Yeah, so the latest book is again something which I got interested in. Over the last 3 years or so, I've been very interested in personal development. Like, what are the things that work, right? And the big realization for me is what we feel as accomplishments or, people doing amazing things in self-improvement is some kind of magic. But the realization that all of this is typically habits formed over a period of time.
Correct.
So, the latest book is called Keep Calm and Lead On. And the story, it's a short book about how calmness as a leader can be practiced and learned.
Very interesting. Okay.
Right? So people usually think he's a calm person, she's a calm person, I'm not that. But how do you build that state of calm in your actions by deliberate practice? What are the tips you can use? What are the tricks you can use? Illustrated some stories, which I feel are reflective of what. And the book starts with the story of Captain Sully, who landed the plane in the River Hudson.
Correct.
And he made an amazing statement. He said that think of my calmness as a deposit that I was making for the last 42 years.
Wow.
I had a large balance that I could draw down in those 90 seconds that I had, right? So that's why I was calm, because I was practicing this for about 2 years.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Ashwin, on that note, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for talking to me so much and at so much length about Manah Wellness, about all the mental the well-being issues that are being faced and what you're doing about them. And thank you for talking to me about your books. Thanks again and good luck.
Great. It's my pleasure. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.